"I'd better go see if they're in there," Mark added, nodding at the remains of one of the houses. Gunny reached out and grabbed Mark's arm to stop him. Then he asked Rob if he had ever worked any fire scenes. When Rob nodded his head, Gunny asked him if he would have a look around. Rob moved off, pulling Victor to help him. Mark was grateful. He didn't know if he could bear to see the charred bodies. The old man turned his attention back to Mark. "Assuming they bugged out, where would they go?" "My house would be the logical place," Mark said, knowing the old man was just trying to distract him. "But it's too far with no transportation. There was a state park not too far from here where they like to camp, but I don't think Mike would go there. They may have turned it into a refugee camp. Even if they didn't, there would be too many people there. There were also some woods where we used to play near here. I guess that's the best possibility." "We'll check out the woods as soon as Rob is finished checking things out," Gunny said. He didn't have to say it depended on whether Rob found anything or not. They all watched as Rob moved slowly around both of the destroyed houses, prodding and poking around with a shovel he'd gotten out of one of the trucks. He studied several spots intently. It made Mark hold his breath every time Rob stopped somewhere for more than a moment. Some of the places he stopped, though, seemed unlikely spots to find anyone. He looked at both driveways for a while, and he spent several minutes looking at Mike's gun safe that was in the garage. After a concise examination of the property, including a brief look at the storage shed, Rob returned to the cluster of men. "Good news. I don't see any bodies in the rubble," he reported. Mark was relieved. At least there was a possibility they were alive. Rob continued, "The houses were probably set on fire separately. There are no burn marks on the ground where the fire traveled, so unless it was from some floating embers, somebody burned them both intentionally. The houses are burned too completely for me to tell if they took any rifle fire. The shed has no bullet holes, but that doesn't really mean anything as far back as it sits. However, there are some bullet strikes in some of the trees around your brother's house, and I found some blood on the ground. I don't think it was your family, though. It's all behind the trees on the opposite side from the house, where you'd expect the MZBs, as you call them, to be if they attacked. You think the MZBs could have killed them and dragged them off? Possibly, but not likely. If that happened, then why burn the houses? They were probably burned to get the occupants out. Do you know anyone named Rocky?" "I know a stockbroker in San Antonio named Rocky. He's a friend of a friend, really." "Anybody that your brother or dad might know named Rocky?" "No, not that I know of. Why?" "Someone spray-painted Rocky's house on both driveways and on the shed," Rob explained. "That was Mike," Mark explained excitedly. "Rocky was what we called this squirrel who lived here when we were kids, you know, Rocky and Bullwinkle. He lived in this knothole in one of the trees in the back. Dad always threatened he was going to concrete it up, and we would beg him not to. That must be what Mike means. We need to look in that knothole." "Which tree was it?" Manny asked. "That one," Mark pointed, as he and the other men ran toward the tree like kids on Christmas morning. The knothole was about 10 feet from the ground. Victor, who was almost as big and tall as Jim, put his back to the trunk and clasped his hands together to give someone a leg up. "Come on, Ed, you're the lightest." "I'm not sticking my hand in there to get bit," Ed said. Several of the men gave him a look. "Can you lift me?" Mark asked. "Sure, stand on my shoulders." Mark did as the younger man said. He was surprised at how easily Victor lifted him up. He started to reach into the hole, but realized that one of Rocky's descendants might be living in there. He knocked around the opening, but nothing came out or made any sound. He carefully reached into the tree and felt the plastic bag. Upon removing it, he could see there was a note inside a Ziploc bag. He climbed down and opened the bag. The note was short. Mark read it out loud. September 19th. "Dear Butthead, I knew you would come. Everyone is okay. We got attacked by a bunch of Nazi skinheads. We kicked their asses, but they threatened that they'd be back. Dad, Jay, and I figured we'd better go to Plan B in case they did. We moved out and camped for a couple days. They came back with a big group, and I watched them burn the place down. It was hard not to waste some of them, but it would have put us all at risk. We've decided to come see you. I've heard on the shortwave that things aren't nearly as bad in your neck of the woods. With no running vehicles and not enough bicycles, we decided to walk. We don't want to stay on the roads any more than necessary anyway. We have a route planned out, but I hesitate to put it in this letter in case someone else finds it. I hope to be there 10 or 12 days. Go to the tree you fell out of when you were 8. 10 yards west is some buried treasure. I hope you brought the truck. Bring it back to your house for me. Thanks, your brother." Smart cookie, Gunny said. No names, no places for anybody to know but you. What's the date today? Joe asked. It's the 28th. Tomorrow is 10 days, Dwight said. They may be there when we get back. Sorry, guys. Looks like we came up for nothing. Maybe not. Where's this tree he's talking about? Gunny asked. In the woods I was telling you about, Mark answered. It'll be dark in half an hour. Can we camp there out of sight? I think so. Let's go see. Was there anything in the shed? Nope. Looks like someone cleaned it out, Rob answered. Then let's load up and move out, Gunny ordered. The men got into the trucks and cars and followed Mark's Jeep about half a mile down the road. He turned into a large wooded lot that was probably 8 or 10 acres in size. That didn't seem very big now, but Mark remembered this place seemed like a universe unto itself when he was young. He, Mike, and their friends spent countless days playing on this lot. Mark was able to find a path through the trees wide enough to drive to a small clearing out of sight of the road. Gunny had the drivers park the vehicles around the outside of the clearing. It reminded Mark of an old Western movie where they circled the wagons. The men got out, and Gunny immediately had 2 of the men stand guard. He had Victor and Rob, who were fast becoming friends, scout the perimeter of the lot. The other men quickly pulled out the tents and set them up inside the circle as quietly as they could in the falling light. Rob and Victor reported that everyone was clear. There was a house on the eastern side, but it appeared to be uninhabited. When camp was set and everyone had eaten, Gunny assigned the guard shifts. 2 men would take 2 hours each. Joe and Manny had the first shift. Mark had 10 to midnight with Dwight. When that was all settled, Mark grabbed a shovel and headed for the cache his brother had left. He found the tree and paced off 10 yards toward where the sun was barely pink. When he swept the leaves away, he could see where the dirt was fresh. It was easy to shovel the loose dirt, and in no time he was down 18 inches or so. There was a metallic clank, and he quickly shoveled enough dirt off to see the top of a 55-gallon drum. Dropping down on his knees, he swept the remaining dirt off of the top. Then, with Gunny holding a small flashlight, he read 2 of 4 in Mike's handwriting. Mark grabbed the barrel and tried to pull it out. It was way too heavy. Several of the others tried to help him, and they were only able to move it a fraction of an inch. Mark started digging around the sides of the barrel and quickly found 2 of the other drums. When he had cleared the dirt to a little over halfway down the side, the men were able to pull the barrel out of the hole. Victor volunteered to shovel out the next one, and Mark, now drenched in sweat, was happy to let him. Victor easily cleared out the next 2. Mark saw Manny elbow Ed so that he would take a turn. Ed reluctantly took the shovel and awkwardly climbed down into the hole where the 3 liberated drums had been. He hacked at the dirt ineffectively with a tool, wielding it like a 6-year-old with a 10-pound sledgehammer. When he had spent almost as much time as it had taken Victor to dislodge the 2 barrels, Manny had all he could stand. "Give me the shovel," he ordered his son-in-law. Ed handed the shovel up and then crawled up out of the hole with the grace of a fish flopping in the bottom of a boat. Manny jumped down and finished clearing the dirt in just a few minutes. The men pulled it up. This one, marked 1 of 4, was the heaviest by far. Mark pulled out his Leatherman tool and unscrewed the bolt that tightened the clamping ring. When he had the ring off, he found that the lid had been sealed down with silicone. It was hard to pry off, but with the help of others, he freed it. The contents were encased inside a heavy plastic bag. Taped to the inside of the top was a Ziploc with a manifest in it. Mark looked at the papers for a moment and read it to the group. "No wonder this one's so heavy. It's mostly full of ammo. It also has a Burke-filled water filter, a Coleman stove, and some of the 1-pound propane cylinders, plus some baby clothes for the little ones and the family photo album." "Geez, just this one is worth its weight in gold," Dwight said. "I wonder what's in the others." Mike put the contents of all 4 barrels in here. One contains a whole list of guns and some more ammo. That one is full of MREs, whatever they are, 14 cases. MRE stands for Meals Ready to Eat. It's a self-contained military field meal, Rob explained. "Yeah," Gunny agreed. "They taste like shit, but you can live on them." Everyone laughed, including Mark. He realized how good it felt. "The last one is full of all kinds of stuff. There's fuel stabilizer, more propane cylinders, extra clothes and boots for the adults and older children." Mike's gold and silver coins were listed, but Mark didn't mention them, and the family Bible and some other odds and ends. "Man, what a haul. Your brother was lucky he could hide all this stuff," Joe said. "And luckier that you're going to bring it to him," Gunny added. The men loaded the barrels onto Mark's truck and tied them in place. Mark considered taking the silver and gold out of its drum and putting it in his Jeep with him, but decided that hidden in plain sight was probably best. Mark washed up a little, then it was time for him to report for his 2-hour guard shift.